Another surprise that we've seen in recent days is the new tourist licence law in Valencia from the Partido Popular, the government, which starts, when, now? Straight away? Or
yes.
August?
That's the case. It's, as we were commenting before it's kind of a cloak and dagger situation. They posted the law on the 2nd of August, and it came into force just the very next day, on the 3rd of August. And, it's the start of the holidays. August is normally a court-off month for everybody. There's almost no court appointments, so most of the lawyers get the month off. The ones that do real estate, like me, I'm Pellicer and Heredia, always we have at least a skeleton crew and people on rotation. But, a lot of people just close off the office for the month.
Well, certainly governments, generally, departments.
Oh, yeah, of course. There's no one on the government meeting now, but they just did it, and it's quite a huge change from the last 20 and 21 law, which is the last one that came into force.
Which is the last information that I have. So I guess they've been working on this for a little while then. You can't just suddenly bring something like this in overnight.
No,
and how come nobody knew about it?
And that's the thing. I don't know how, I don't know why they do this, but probably it's not going to be very popular, because it has quite a few changes that apply to the day-to-day letting of apartments, and they're going to coming into force immediately. Also provokes people to having to adapt to these over the summer. It's going to be quite inconvenient for a lot of people.
But it's quite inconvenient for lawyers, I would have thought as well. They've got to get up to speed on this quite quickly.
Oh yeah. Sadly, that's how things are. On some occasions, when the piece of news is a soundbite enough for reporters to put it on the news, like with the golden visa, then we have some warning that's going to happen. But in this case, being a regional law, it's probably not newsworthy. Well, at least it is for me. But I can understand that probably not for the whole public. And they kept it under wraps until it was already published and in force. But now we have to adapt and suffer the changes.
Okay, we changes can be quite a good thing in some areas for some people. And on the headline, tourist license, new law in Valencia, sounds to me like it might be something that could benefit people who've been struggling to perhaps afford rent or find another apartment. Is it going to be like that?
Could be. That's a good point. Well, like in every issue, there's always several parts. And I'm always thinking of clients. And the clients that we normally have are the people that are actually renting out.
They're buying them and renting them.
So they're buying it as an investment. They're having it as a second home. They use it like a month or a couple of months a year. And then they rent it out the rest. So, they can kind of make both of them, use it as a holiday destination, but also try to make a living, or at least, supply their normal rent or the normal salary with this.
Okay, how do we define tourist accommodation? What would be the way to
They've just changed it. Remember that they've always changed. When you go and stay at a place, there's different places in which you can stay when you go on holiday. You can go to a hotel, which has obviously its own system. You can go to something called a tourist apartment, which also in Spain are called apartahoteles. Those are like a building with a reception, 24-hour service, but actually you're renting like a separate accommodation. But those also have their own law and their own legislation. What was always up in the air until the 2018 legislation, which is the first one in the Comunidad Valenciana in that regard, is what if you just are a private citizen and you have a house and you decide to rent it out during the holidays? That is called a vivienda de uso turístico, so a house with tourist use. That's the one that's subject to the tourist license, and that's what we're talking about. In the past, used to be any property that's going to be rented by people not using it as their permanent home, but just people that are or for work, that are just passing through, so they're on holiday, and that you advertise it as a holiday place in some way, normally through Airbnb or Booking or any of these websites. But now they added an extra restriction, which is the 10-day limit. If you apply for a tourist license now, or you have a tourist license, now if you rent out these properties, you can only rent them out up to 10 days to the same person. So that means that if you're coming for holiday and you want to rent the same place for 2 weeks or for a month, in theory, according to the new law, you can't.
That's quite a radical change.
It is quite a radical change. I don't know what the idea behind this is to increase the rotation of our tourists, to prevent people from staying for too long. I'm really not too sure.
Might be to dissuade people from buying these types of accommodation and make it a little bit more difficult for them, so that perhaps they go for longer term rents, which is the issue that we've been seeing.
That is, in fact, an excellent point. Probably the answer to the question is, as one of the sides of the conflict, which is, let's say, the one I represent the best,
yes,
which is the owners. There's another one, which is the tenants. So it's true that there's a shortage of long-term accommodation, well, here in Heredia and almost everywhere in the Comunidad Valenciana area, as it is very touristy. So one way to try and lower rent and provide more accommodations is, to make it a little bit more restrictive the way you use a property just to rent it out for tourists.
Make it more difficult for short-term rental.
That's right. And they make the biggest two changes about that. The first one is the one I mentioned, is a limit of 10 days of renting the same property to the same person or a group of people, by the way. So don't try to be cheeky about it.
The same
and
group.
Rent it to, it's a couple coming and they rent it to the guy and then to the woman after 10 days. No.
That was going to be my next question.
I know. But they're both registered as guests of the house. So technically that shouldn't work.
Okay. For those people who have tourist accommodation, they've rented it out. Maybe they've got some people coming next week for 2 weeks.
Right.
They're already falling foul of this new law. If it started already, what's going to happen there?
That's a very good question as well. Well, in fact, those are covered. In technically all the bookings that there are previously booked, before the 2nd of August, well, technically the 3rd of August, that are more for more than 2 weeks can be no problem. In my opinion, it's more of a professional opinion on that.
A legal professional opinion.
Yes, legal professional opinion would be that probably authorities are not going to be too tough with that, from now until the end of the year or so, because you must leave some room for people to adapt to a law that's been suddenly passed.
Immediately imposed.
Right, definitely. So yeah, I guess they will be a little bit more lenient. But the second restriction that that more stands out from the law, which it has a lot of there's a lot of it to unpack, could be the community of owners. One of the hot topics from the moment that the old tourist law was passed is, did the community of owners have the ability to either increase community fees for the owners of the properties that were rented out as tourist destinations, or could they ban the use of the properties of the community altogether as such? The answer is from at least Pellicer and Heredia legal opinion. I know that by heart because I talked to Pedro and Ignacio about this and we were all in agreement, is, well, it's a private property that you own, so technically the community of owners should not be allowed to dictate how you use your own property. However, that's probably something that should have, would need to be decided at a court, and no court cases have been decided up to appeal point in which you can say, okay, the case law for this is the solution. So,
So there's no precedent at the moment.
That's not yet. They're still probably working on it. However, now we have another nail into the coffin, which is the new law states that if the community of owners says that there cannot be no properties used for tourist purposes, then that's it.
So let's define, if we can, a community of owners. So if you're in an apartment complex, perhaps that's that community.
Exactly.
There's a body of the owners who can make that decision. What about, say, on an urbanisation? Is that a similar scenario?
Exactly the same.
Okay. So we're not talking like a community as in Valencia as a whole. We're talking about the individual communities.
No, but you're right for defining. Yes. We're talking about the community of owners when you share some common elements with other owners on your area.
Yep.
For example, a shared pool, or a lift, or a staircase, an underground parking place for everybody to share, gardens, as you said. All of that makes you be part of a community. You probably know because you pay
fees.
That's right.
Absolutely.
You pay their monthly or quarterly or yearly fees for that, and there's a yearly meeting, and there's probably an administrator, and definitely you have a president, which is one of the other owners. Then you are part of a community. If you live in a chalet or an isolated country house or an isolated property, then no, you are not part of a community, and then you can do, provided that you comply with the rest of the provisions of the law, do whatever you want with your property.
But at least we're getting some sort of definition now, with perhaps where some grey areas before. Just coming up to 4:30, mainland Spain, and Pellicer and Heredia, AlicanteLawyers.es. Property Guru is with us today. I think that's a fair enough name for you. Antonio is here talking about the new tourist licence law in the Valencian community, which came in on the 3rd of August, which we really didn't know very much about, and we're just finding out about now and looking at the situations that have changed for those that have these types of accommodation. And one part that's a major change is the actual licence duration.
That's right. Used to be when you got a license, they are not like extremely difficult to get, but require a bit of paperwork. But, there's always advice. And this is something that I have, to be honest, we advise at Pellicer and Heredia for clients. Well, if you can and you can afford it, even if you're not too sure you're going to rent it out as tourists, just get the license. It's forever. But that advice has just gone down the drain with the rest of it, because now they only last for 5 years, which is plenty of time. But, now they require renewal. All the licenses that were already granted will expire on the 3rd of August of the year 2029. So that means 5 years from, the 3rd of August when the law was approved. So that's good. Although there's going to be a lot of license renewals.
So if you get at the same time. So if you currently have one, you're okay till 2029.
That's right, yes.
We're seeing this in a number of other places around Spain. Barcelona has certainly done a similar thing and said that licenses will be revoked and then reissued at a certain point. I think it was 28 there. Okay, that's, like you say, if they're all going to be renewed at the same time, that creates quite a bit of paperwork.
Yeah.
Also quite a bit of business for lawyers, for instance.
Yes. But not all of them will renew at the same time, and I'll explain you why. It's true that, if you have a property and you keep the property until the year 2029, you will, there will be a bunch of people that renew at the same time. However, whenever a property is transferred, then, when the ownership change, because you sell it and you pass away and you bequeath it in your probate to another person,
so
then
ownership.
A new license need to be issued. Used to be just like a name change of the license, which was like the easy part, but now you have to apply for a full new license, which implies that you have to meet all the requirements that they used to have to meet when the license was issued.
I imagine that's not relatively straightforward for your average owner either. It's got to be something that needs to come through a proper legal process.
That's right, yes, no, because applying for the license can be quite complicated. It's a several-step process and requires paperwork. And again, it's not too difficult in the sense that the amount of paperwork that is required, the process is clear and straightforward, but it is true that requires plenty of paperwork. It requires a visit from a technician for you to adapt the property and have the necessary utilities, to put some signs or posts in the property, and so
usual health and safety requirements, habitat.
That's right. And one of the other big changes, besides this change of the time and the duration, is the ability to rent just rooms. Think about something very British, like the bed and breakfast. Here, if you intended to buy a property in order to rent part of the property to tourists and you remain as owner in the other part of the property, you just can't forget about it. That has been banned by law. You can do it just if you're doing long term, right? You have an apartment and then you rent one of the rooms to a student or somebody that's going to live there permanently or semi-permanently. But you cannot just rent a room of a property in which you live for tourist purposes just for a few days.
See, this is where it becomes, it puts affordable accommodation back onto the market for the likes of students or those who are on a lower wage. We can see more and more now, perhaps, the reasoning behind some of these changes.
Yes, of course, that's true. In fact, the measure has gone to a extreme that you need an individual cadastral reference for each property that's going to be rented out, and the full property needs to be rented out. So I was thinking that, yes, it's true, this will be useful for single people or students or workers that are displaced from their hometown for a few months.
We do see quite often, don't we, Antonio, the news stories in Spain where you have children still living at home with their parents at quite a late age.
That's true. Yes, of course. That will help solving that. You can still join several people and rent a property and such. That's true. But I was thinking about the people that have a country house or a house with 2 stories, normally in a plot, single family house. detached, semi-detached, and you have even separate entrances or an outside the staircase, which is quite typical. And then you rent, you live downstairs, you rent upstairs, or the other way around. That was legal up until now, but it's not anymore. So you have to be aware that new licenses won't allow you to do this.
Even though it'll be more than one room, that sort of scenario, perhaps top floor,
even
or
to
bottom floor.
even to kitchens.
We would call it a granny flat, I guess, in UK.
That's right,
that would be
yes.
the idea, wouldn't it? So
Yes.
that's you're not going to be able to do that on a short-term basis.
No, you won't be doing that and getting a license that has been completely and specifically banned in the new law. Yeah,
Okay.
lots of
What are
changes.
the other changes that we need to be making people aware of here?
Well, that is basically like the most important bit.
Mm-hmm.
This I have a few questions as well because
Yeah.
we don't still have all the answers.
Indeed.
And if the law does not allow you to rent a tourist place for more than 10 straight days, my question could be, if you rent a property for 15 days, it still requires a tourist license, or is that outside of the law, even if it's for touristy purposes? Or are really all touristy rentals limited to 10 days? The law is not too clear about it, and there's have been some questions submitted to the issuers of the law, let's say, right, to the government, to say some word, to see if they can clarify that, because the law is not clear enough, in my opinion, for that.
Okay, so there are still some questions. What would you say to somebody who's been listening this afternoon and thought that they were free and clear with renting short-term rooms for the foreseeable future, and are now concerned that perhaps what might have been actually a business for them
Yes.
may not be what they were thinking it was going to be? What's your advice?
My advice could be, if you have a property and you're renting just the rooms, because that has been completely banned, you should look forward either renting the full property, short-term with a license, or long-term, as normal rental, or you can rent the rooms, single rooms, but it has to be long-term. At least, a few months or a few weeks in order to be on the safe side, and not for tourist purposes, but for
So
somebody...
a few weeks more than 10 days, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And for somebody that needs it not because they're coming and doing tourism, but because they are either studying, working, or living here.
And would that be a different license again, or a different process?
Nothing at all. If you're going to rent out a room in a purpose that's not tourist, it does not require a license at all. And it is allowed in general terms to rent out a room. What I was saying before about the license, banning, rental room for touristy purposes, it doesn't mean that you cannot rent a room at all. It means that you cannot rent it for people that come to do tourism. But, if you have a student coming here, exchange a student for a few weeks, that's perfectly fine. Even if it's less than 11 days, should be fine, provided they're not coming here to do tourism. They're coming here, for example, for a project or for work or for, just living here.
Okay. We've seen some other developments in recent days as well. The Ministry of Social Services, Equality and Housing approving plans for rental subsidies up to 50%. It was quite a successful scheme in 2023. Over 4,000 grants awarded for more than 18 million euros. It's something that's definitely needed, but we are seeing that we're going to see average rents in districts continue to rise. They've gone up by 20% in just the last couple of years, but this will be a real help for people who need it, won't it, if they can get rental subsidies for up to 50%. My question is, who are the types of people that would qualify for that? Do you know?
That's an excellent question. Normally, the people that rent out for subsidies for rental, they have to provide that they don't have the means to actually normally pay the rent in a normal way, because in theory, in the Spanish understanding of rent payments should be that all your expenses towards your housing should be just the 30% of your income. Right. That means that if you are spending more than that, then you are already meeting some of those requirements. Particularly also, they normally benefit people that are on a vulnerable position. They are victims of discrimination. Yeah,
domestic violence.
That's right.
Or perhaps single mothers, perhaps.
That's
like
right.
Single parents, I should say these days.
But of course, single parents, of course, if victims of violence, in this case, and also if you are victim of terrorism, although there's luckily not that
relatively rare in Valencia these days, thank goodness.
Yes, thank goodness.
There was a time.
There was a time, and it was included in the law at the time. Also, some asylum seekers can get those benefits as well. So the list could be probably around that.
A lot of things closed down in Spain in August, and Moody, who's on filming duties this afternoon, was very keen to know if the courts are working or not. I'm not quite sure if he's done anything wrong recently, but do the courts take a holiday throughout August? Because we know already they have a backlog. They had backlog even before COVID, since the financial crisis, and then
That's
COVID.
Right.
So there is quite a backlog in courts in Spain. So do they stop?
Yes. Well, it is true that there's quite a backlog in Spain. I think we're getting to become quite famous about it, sadly. And more lawyers are doing our very best to try and reach any kind of agreement that's good for the clients, to try and avoid court. And also using court like, I'll take you to court, and it will take ages as a threat. But yes, I hope Moody is taking a card of mine whenever he goes around, just in case you get stopped by the police, so you have quick access to my number. But in case, yes, it's true. It's customary in Spain for August not to be any hearings. That does not exactly mean that there's no court activity. Courts are still open, let's say, although obviously with less staff, because most of it is going on holiday on rotation, and they're working on the files, behind closed doors, but there is no hearings. That being said, no hearings is not exactly true, because criminal courts is still open to some degree. If there's an ongoing investigation that's not urgent and just waiting for hearings, you won't get a hearing in August. But, if you are drunk and disorderly, or you have a DUI or any other kind of criminal emergency and get stopped by the police, there's still judges on duty in which you can be put up in front of so you can be judged.
Okay, so we do hear about this, don't we? Particularly in the holiday hotspots, where people are up in front of the beak, as we used to call them, in the days gone by, because of some misdemeanor the night before. So that, of course, is still going on,
of course,
in Spain. But it's good to see we've had quite a busy July and August as far as the tourist front is concerned, which is good for most people.
Yes.
We have to say, in the areas that BayRadio broadcasts to. Particularly, and I think it's going to be another bumper year. Both the airports are recording record numbers again.
For sure, yes, it's going up and up. In fact, one of the things that we do in Pellicer and Heredia is we take rotation on holidays in the summer. But one of the things I normally used to do is I take only a few days, because summer is not, for me it's quite busy on real estate. A lot of clients, a lot of people are coming, seeing homes. They need last-minute appointments. There has to be somebody readily available. And we used to have just the one guy, but it's not enough anymore. So at least we have to have 2 or 3 readily available, because there's plenty of appointments. And that's kind of a new post-pandemic kind of thing.
Yeah, we've seen, certainly, haven't we, in the last few years since the pandemic, sales pick up. So that's continuing right the way through the holiday period.
Definitely. And now July and August, they are not what they used to be.
Yes, because estate agents used to close back in the day, didn't they?
That's right. And notaries as well.
Yeah.
In fact, I was going to talk about that. So this week I had quite a busy week of completions, because I was, in fact, off last week. So, I did get some holidays as well. But this week I started strong, going to Alicante to notaries. And I went to 3 different notaries in 3 different days, which, is plenty. And all of them say the same thing. August is not what it used to be. All the notaries were quite busy, with plenty of people coming and going. So that means there's a lot of business, which is unusual for August, but it's less and less rare now, and it's becoming quite the norm. So for us, definitely this is going to be, as you said, a bumper year, and sales are going to increase for sure. At least the activity seems to look like it.
Yeah, it certainly does. And that's keeping you busy anyway, isn't it, Antonio? That's a good thing whilst the other guys are on holiday, We did give them a bit of a hard time about that recently when they were in a couple of weeks back.
Yeah, I noticed, because when they came and whipped me, they did it extra strong. So, probably about that. No, I'm joking aside. But, of course, they I normally come when they are engaged otherwise, because they really like to do this themselves. I'm quite happy to do it.
Yeah.
So, in this case, they're on holiday, both of them, for this week. So, I come and substitute them. But, I hope they enjoy it.
We love to see you.
And they come refreshed.
Yeah, and you are the property guru. Just got a message through here, which I'll read to you.
Right.
Kaikal, please ask about properties without a tourist licence. We've asked Al-Khalili Council about an attached property, and they inform us that there is no licence applied for. The property is still being let for tourists, but the council say it's a Valencia government problem. Can your guest lawyer contact me direct to advise me off air? So I'm sure you can do that, Antonio. Yeah, I'll give you the details.
Of course, yes.
Okay, and thanks to Gary for getting in touch with that.
Of course. That's quite an interesting point.
Yeah, you relish these sorts of things,
I love a challenge.
Certainly, Gary, we'll make sure that Antonio gets in touch. We'll get you some details to him shortly. And thanks very much for your question. Anytime that you like, you can indeed get in touch here via our usual services, the usual way. In fact, 684 455 844 for your WhatsApp. Email studio@bayradio.fm. Of course, you can go to the alicantilawyers.es website. It comes up as Pellicer and Heredia, but we use alicantilawyers.es to make things a little bit more straightforward for everybody. And plenty of advice there on all things legal in Spain in a number of different languages as well. So great to see you, Antonio. Enjoy the rest of the summer.
Thank you.
Even though the guys are working you quite hard. Take care, and we'll catch up again soon.